to our webinar featuring guest speaker from the Mississippi Office of Student Financial Aid. We are excited that you're joining us today. As you get settled into the space, we've got an activity for you. Shannon, if you'll go back one just for housekeeping. There we go. So know that you are in webinar mode. So we are unable to see or hear you. You're obviously on mute, but if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A feature you'll see on your bottom screen. We want you to engage in today's conversation. So if you'll utilize the chat feature for chat and sharing out your experiences, we have an opening question in just a second, but use the Q&A just to keep things a little bit more organized for your specific questions throughout the presentation. So our opening question as we get started and kind of be mindful in today's presentation, we want to know what updates would you like to receive today from the Mississippi Office of Student Financial Aid processes or the application itself. So if you'll drop this response in the chat feature, give everybody a few moments to get familiar with the space. Again, Q&A is going to be directly for the presenter. We'll be monitoring that. And then the chat will be to interact outside of questions. So we've got someone that's already responded. They have questions. They want to make sure and hear about the application process. Seems like application seems to be a pretty common response. So I know Jennifer will definitely touch on that. So if you're just joining us, welcome. We are in webinar mode, so we cannot see or hear you, but we want to interact with you still. If you'll drop in the chat the answer to the question that you see on the screen, and then the Q&A feature will be available for Jennifer to monitor. A few more things we've learned here. Any changes to the FAFSA we need to know about. Amy, that was you. Know that we've got some webinars specifically on that coming at the end of the month. So make sure you check our website. We're going to dig in specifically to line-by-line changes to the FAFSA as well as some policy changes. Federal that will update. So there's that additional. And then any other info, one of our attendees and any and all information, they have a new class, document deadlines, any changes due to COVID, what online assistance can students take advantage of. Like to know as much as possible. So we've got a really eager audience, Jennifer. So thanks everybody for participating. This will really help guide the conversation. And I'll let Shannon take over.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. I'm Shannon Grimsley, the Director of State Outreach for the Woodward Hines Education Foundation and the Get to College program. We are recording today's session and will send a link to anyone who is registered. For those watching this recording, today's date is September 15th, 2020, and the material in this webinar is current through the 2021 school year. In today's session, Mississippi Office of Student Financial Aid updates, you will hear from Jennifer Rogers, the Director of the Mississippi Office of Student Financial Aid. Jennifer will be sharing all the updates from their office in regards to the application and any administrative procedures that counselors need to perform for their students. I will now share a little background on Get to College and a few logistics about the webinar before we get started. Get to College is a nonprofit program of the Woodward Hines Education Foundation. We have 3 centers in Mississippi, one in Jackson, Ocean Springs, and South Haven. And we help parents, students, high school counselors, and teachers with all aspects of college planning and financial aid. And best of all, as most of you know, all of our services are free. In our centers, we offer personalized college counseling appointments where we can tell students when to apply for admission and scholarships, help fill out their FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, or advise on essay writing and interviewing. For the fall semester, just like most people, we are offering all of our services in a virtual manner. This will include the counselor webinar series that you are participating today and many other professional development opportunities, student and parent workshops, remote FAFSA completion, and two-way text messaging. As Kirsten mentioned earlier, we are in webinar mode, And during the webinar, we cannot see or hear you, but you can ask us questions through the instant messenger or chat at any time. Our agenda for the day is we will hear from Jennifer, then we will have a Q&A session, then we'll update you guys on any upcoming webinars and professional development opportunities and give you our contact information at the end. Your moderators for today are myself, and then also Kirsten, who you saw earlier, and she will be moderating the chat during this time and presenting any of those questions to us. So I would now like to introduce our featured speaker of the day. I'm sure many of you are familiar with her, but Jennifer Rogers is the director of the Mississippi Office of Student Financial Aid. In that role, she oversees administration of a $43 million budget and all state-supported student financial aid programs. Since Rogers took leadership in the office in 2009, the office has reduced its administrative overhead while increasing the numbers of students eligible for the state's only need-based grant program by nearly 1,200%. That's pretty impressive, Jennifer. Rogers received her undergraduate degree from the University of the South, Sewanee in Tennessee, and her MBA from Millsaps College in Jackson. She is currently pursuing her doctoral degree at the University of Mississippi, which I know is no easy feat. So congratulations on that, Jennifer. Jennifer, I will be navigating your slides today, so just let me know when you are ready to flip to the next slide. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Shannon. Well, counselors, I sure wish I could see your faces today, but I am glad that we're getting this opportunity to share a little bit about student financial aid. I know we've missed lots of opportunities due to COVID, and we'll miss more that we typically have in the fall. I am Jennifer Rogers, and I lead a wonderful team of folks over at the Mississippi Office of Student Financial Aid. We are currently working from home right now, still in this, time of the pandemic, but we are fully operational. Our call center is active. We are taking emails, we are taking phone calls. And so we are, regardless of what is going on, we are still committed to helping you and helping your students to fulfill their dreams of going to college after high school. And we know that you have a similar goal. So please do consider us your partners in that effort. Next slide. So you may think it is odd to start our discussion of state aid with a discussion of the FAFSA, which is of course the free application for federal student aid. But there is a reason that I'm showing the slide here first. Mississippi doesn't require the FAFSA FAFSA completion to receive state aid, except for one program, and that's the HELP grant that we're going to talk a lot more about in just a minute. But we know that students who complete the FAFSA are more likely to enroll in college than those who don't. That is why we fully support the Get to College campaign. First, you have to FAFSA. We recommend that all students, regarding of their financial situation, complete the FAFSA before completing the Mississippi aid application. Students who complete the FAFSA can actually link directly to the Mississippi aid application from the confirmation page of the FAFSA, and they can actually transfer a lot of their demographic information directly into the state aid app, which makes the process more seamless, and it reduces the opportunity for typing, spelling, and other errors to occur. After completing the FAFSA, students should complete the Mississippi aid application, which we call MAAPP. Just as the FAFSA is a single application for all federal aid, the MAAPP is a single application for all state aid. Next slide. I told you that students can access MAAPP from the confirmation screen of the FAFSA. Students can also access MAAPP cold from the main page of the Mississippi Financial Aid website, which is located at www.msfinancialaid.org. And the front page of our site is shown there. It changes a little bit from time to time. But all students need to do is just click on that green button. There are 2 of them. One of them says apply, and that's where they'll start. Here is a quick look at the first page of the actual application. This is from a couple of years ago, but it still looks basically the same. It is a SMART application. So Skip Logic is built into the application and will direct students to answer questions to determine which programs they may be eligible for. So there's no completing multiple applications for state aid. Just this one application will do it. A progress bar at the top of the application shows how far the student has made it through the application. But I'm not sure you really need that progress bar because the application is pretty short. It's shorter than the federal application for sure, and most applicants can complete it in 10 minutes or less. I tend to assume that every counselor who attends these training events is well versed with our state financial aid programs, knows everything they need to know, but I don't want to assume that incorrectly. So I'm going to briefly discuss our 3 main grant programs that are available to undergraduate students in the state. All they have to do to access these programs is to complete the MAAPP and then submit any supporting documents, which we'll talk about in a bit. Of course, if you want any more information about these programs, we encourage you to visit our website. Get to College is also a font of knowledge and information, and they can probably answer most of your questions as well as we can. But of course, you're welcome to contact us at any time. The Higher Education Legislative Plan Grant is the primary need-based grant in the state. Students must be at least partially Pell eligible. They don't have to be full Pell, but they should at least be Pell eligible. Meet some other income limitations, score a 20 on the ACT, have a 2.5 high school GPA, and complete the specific HELP core curriculum. And we'll talk about that in a bit as well. The wonderful thing about the HELP grant is the award amount. The award is full tuition each year, and that's full tuition at a public institution in the state. It also awards a similar amount to students who choose private schools. So like if let's just say that you wanted to go to MIAPP here in Jackson, the award amount would be equal to what you would get at the closest public university. So the same amount that you would receive if you were going to Jackson State. The Mississippi Tuition Assistance Grant is the primary residency grant. Students cannot be full Pell eligible. That is one of the main stipulations for MTAG. Students must have at least a 15 on the ACT and a 2.5 high school GPA. The program awards $500 a year to freshmen and sophomores and $1,000 a year to juniors and seniors. Finally, the Mississippi Eminent Scholars Grant is our primary merit-based grant program in the state. Students must have a 29 on the ACT and a 3.5 GPA, and the program awards $2,500 a year. Now, there are a few requirements that are common to all 3 programs. First, students must apply for aid every year. Just as students must complete a FAFSA every year to continue to get federal aid, they must complete the MAAPP every year to get state aid. There is an initial application, like when they're seniors in high school, they'll complete the application. And then each subsequent year, the application will be considered to be a renewal application. Second, students must be Mississippi residents to qualify for state aid. I'm not going to get into the details on this since most of you are probably Mississippi counselors and counseling Mississippi resident students, but just in case that you have a student with some kind of interesting family situation, sometimes residency for tuition differs from residency for state aid. And of course, we can answer any questions, specific questions about that if you have any. Finally, to receive and keep state aid, students must maintain continuous full-time enrollment. So what does continuous mean? Continuous means every fall and spring term with no break in enrollment during the regular academic year. So they may sit out summers, and that's fine, but they need to be enrolled full-time fall and spring. But what is full-time? Full-time typically is only 12 hours. For federal aid, lots of other types of aid only requires 12 hours. For the state, though, we require 15 hours for full-time. So just know that that's 3 more than what is required for federal aid. All right, this slide includes some important deadline dates. March 31st is the online application for the HELP grant. And so that is for this current year of students, that's March 31st, 2021. 1 month later, the documents, supporting documents for the HELP grant will be due on April 30th. Then September 15th, and that is next September 15th, not today, so don't freak out. September 15th, 2021 will be the online application deadline for MTAG and MESG. And then a month after that, on October 15th, is the document deadline for MTAG and MESG. So if you can keep in mind March 31st and September 15th, those are your 2 big deadlines with documents due a month later for each. After submitting an application, students will receive a confirmation email that includes their username and a link to set up their password. Once they have gone through that email confirmation process and set up their password, then they can access MAAPP, the account side of MAAPP, the dashboard side of MAAPP, by clicking on the green button on our webpage that reads Dashboard Login. And when they log into the dashboard, they'll see a screen that looks something like this. They will see a list of milestones they've accomplished. So they might see that they've submitted their MAAPP. They might see that they've submitted their FAFSA if they did that first. Depending on where they are in the year and what they've done, they might see that all their student documents are received, or that their other documents are received, or they might even see that they've had an award dispersed. They can see any recent messages that we have sent them on the dashboard, and they can see whether or not they have any missing documents right there from the dashboard. Well, let's talk a little bit more about missing documents. If a student clicks on the Documents tab of their dashboard, they will see a list of documents received and outstanding. For new applicants, we separate missing documents into 2 categories. One are those needed directly from the student, and those will appear at the top. And these typically include only the residency related documents. And then the second category is those documents that are typically submitted by the counselor. And those will appear at the bottom with a note that explains these documents are typically provided by the high school counselor. And beginning this past year, we actually tried something new in that the counselor documents didn't even show up in the student list until after a certain point in the spring. And we do that so that the students aren't constantly, we've had a problem for years that we've worked on various solutions, and we can't seem to quite settle on the solution that helps counselors the most, but I think this is working probably better than anything else we've tried. And that is to just not even show those counselor documents until after a certain point in the spring. And that keeps the students from constantly calling and nagging the counselor saying, hey, why haven't you submitted my high school GPA? Or hey, why haven't you already submitted, my ACT score? Or, or more likely it's the parents calling and nagging you rather than the students. You can go on to the next slide. Regarding documents, each student must demonstrate Mississippi residency. We talked about that earlier. And to do that, they need to submit 2 documents. If a student completes the FAFSA first, then that is considered to be their first residency document, because the FAFSA will come in stating that they are in fact a Mississippi resident. If a student submits a valid driver's license or Mississippi ID number on the MAAPP, on the state application, and the state application actually verifies that driver's license number or ID number in real time with the Mississippi Department of Public Safety, that is their second residency document. So if a student does those 2 things, they don't have to submit any other residency documents. They're done with the residency documentation portion of the process. Now, let's say that a student doesn't do a FAFSA, or maybe they or their parents don't have a valid Mississippi driver's license or state ID, we take both. Then the student has a few other limited options for documenting residency. And please note that these are not the same things that you would document residency if you're going to get a driver's license, for example. The only things that we are able to accept are homestead exemption, voter registration, or vehicle registration, like your car and bridge privilege tax, I think is what it's called. But as long as a student stays continuously enrolled in college without a break of more than a year, then students will only have to document their residency the very first year that they apply. They will not have to do this residency documentation over and over, year after year. It's pretty much a one-time thing for most students. And now, as you can see here, these are the other documents, other eligibility documents that we need to determine whether a student qualifies for aid. And as you can see from the little asterisk, most of these come from you, the high school counselor. These include the high school GPA, the ACT score, the curriculum certification, and we'll talk more about how you get us those documents in just a minute. I want to talk through a few general policies, and let me pause real quick and just apologize. I didn't embed my fonts when I sent Shannon my email presentation, so some of the fonts are not exactly as they were when I did it, so I apologize if you have trouble seeing. Some of the fonts look a little small. First, we only accept ACT scores from national tests. So now these include, of course, the Saturday test at testing sites. They also include the weekday testing that you do at the schools. So, so when we say national test, don't worry, that does include the school-based test. What we don't accept are the residual tests, which are offered by some of the colleges, some of the community colleges, like for college placement. Those are not considered to be national tests. They're scored locally, and we can't use those scores for scholarship purposes. Also remember, the ACT score must be achieved or earned prior to enrollment as a first-time college student. So let's say you have a student who has completed the help application. You'll recall that they need a 20 ACT to qualify for help, but your student has a 19. They've done everything on the help application to meet the timelines, but they've graduated, it's May, they never did better than a 19. That student can still take the summer ACT, the July ACT, for one more try. And if they earn a 20 on it, we will accept that, and that student will then be qualified and eligible to receive the help grant. As long as the ACT score is achieved before beginning college as a full-time student, we will accept it. If a student meets the qualifications for more than one grant program, let's say that they qualify for MESG and HELP, They will only receive aid through the program that awards the most. So they're only going to receive aid through one state grant program at a time. Another thing to be aware of is that grades and enrollment are monitored every term. So students need to be aware they can't go into college and play around that first semester. Or they can, but if their grades drop and below the minimum maintenance GPA, they will lose their state aid until those grades are pulled back up. And then of course, and we already talked about this a little bit, but we do require that students enroll in and complete 15 hours each term to keep state aid. And we do this because we want full-time students to be able to complete a 2-year degree in 2 years or a 4-year degree in 4 years. And they can't do that if they don't take enough hours. One other thing on that previous slide, that by complete, we do mean earn. So the student has to earn 15 hours. If a student completes a course but receives an F, the student actually doesn't earn any credit for that course. And so that will need to, of course, be taken into consideration. Okay, that's all we can go on. We believe the most important state aid program that the state offers is the HELP grant. And our goal is really to create a HELP culture in our high schools. So we encourage you to start by promoting the HELP grant. Keep in mind what a great award it is, $8,000+ at schools like Ole Miss or Mississippi State. And for many students, that is the difference between being able to go to a 4-year school and not being able to go. Next, we encourage you to try to identify potential HELP recipients. You can use the junior level ACT test to identify students that might have a 20 or better, or students who may be close, who maybe have a 17, 18, 19, that with a little ACT prep help or a little extra work might be able to pull that up to a 20. If you have access to free and reduced lunch indicators or economic disadvantage indicators in your student information systems to identify students who might meet the income requirements, we encourage you to take advantage of that. Look at that data. Of course, at the same time I say that, I also encourage you not to assume. The HELP income threshold is $39,500 a year. That is right at median household income in the state of Mississippi, which means that half of our families in Mississippi make that or less. Half make more. So that's 50% of your potential student population that may be eligible for help. Finally, we encourage you to try to put the right supports in place for your students. Make sure that those students with 18 and 19 on the junior ACT can retest. Take advantage of your ACT test waivers. You have 4 now instead of just 2. Host college countdown events. You may be aware of the college countdown program. There are application days, FAFSA days, signing days. All of those events build that college going culture in your school. So we encourage you to do those things. Obviously, everything is more difficult now with COVID, but eventually I do think things are going to get back to normal. And so we do hope that you do those things. Also, utilize your FAFSA and your state aid, utilize your reports. And we're going to talk about that actually as a great segue into my next slide. So we just talked about MAAPP as the application that students complete to apply for state aid and to check their awards. But MAAPP is more than that. It is also a student information system for high school counselors to check accounts and to submit student information. Authorized counselors can access everything that they need to advise students about state aid from within MAAPP. Within MAAPP, counselors can see and export lists of students who have completed a MAAPP or a FAFSA. They can search for students, they can see student accounts, they can update student accounts, and they can access the document share portal and do more. And I'm gonna actually show you all of these things. MAAPP just launched for the first time right around this time last year. And of course, as with any new, completely new technology, we have had some kinks to work out during this first year. Certainly things haven't worked exactly as we wanted them to, but we have been able to work through most of those, and we continue to work on improvements every day. The 2021-2022 Mississippi Aid application opens along with the FAFSA in just a couple of weeks on October 1st, 2020. And so now I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna give you a little tour of MAAPP from the counselor's perspective. So, of course, we talked about students accessing MAAPP. Superintendents and headmasters, counselors, teachers can all access MAAPP. And yes, I did include teachers. So this is, of course, the first year that all public schools in the state are required to offer the College and Career Readiness course. So we really are encouraging teachers who are teaching that course, especially if you're teaching it to seniors, to register for access to MAAPP so that you can work with your high school counselors and work with your students to make sure that they've done everything they need to know to do in the financial aid process. Before counselors or teachers can access MAAPP though, the district, or if you happen to be at a private school, the district or private school must have an annual participation agreement that has been signed by the current superintendent or headmaster, and that has to be on file with our office, and each teacher or counselor must be authorized. I know this sounds complicated, but we have these security measures in place, number one, because they're required by the federal government, but also because we want your student data to be as protected as possible, and we want you to be protected so that you don't inadvertently share something that you shouldn't. So what is going to happen, district superintendents and private school headmasters who already have a MAAPP account, which means that they already have a signed participation agreement on file with us, they are going to receive an email this week. Hopefully those emails are going out tomorrow. And those emails will have instructions for the superintendent or the headmaster to renew the annual participation agreement online. And through that process, they will also reauthorize the high school counselors who already have a MAAPP account. And so this is a process that will take place every year around this time. That participation agreement is an annual thing that must be signed, and the certification statement is an annual thing that must be signed. So once a counselor, once that participation agreement is reauthorized, and then the counselor has been reauthorized by the headmaster or the superintendent, then the counselors with the existing MAAPP account can log in just as they normally would. The first time after that process takes place that a counselor logs in who's been reauthorized, they will see a certification statement. And that certification statement is just a single page that says, I agree to use the data responsibly, I agree to not share it where I shouldn't. It's basically just your statement saying that you agree to proper data use. And you will have to sign that once a year, every year around this time, just as a reminder of how we're all supposed to be treating data appropriately. So this is a screenshot of the main page of the Student Financial Aid website again. Again, you can see that we've circled the dashboard link. Let's say you don't have, your district doesn't have a signed participation agreement, or you don't have an account in MAAPP and you want to get one. Anyone, superintendent, you, teacher, can click on this dashboard login or request account button to request an account. Next page. And that will bring you to this screen where you log in. If you do not have an account, well, first of all, if you do have an account and you just want to log in and you forgot your username or password, you can reset either of those there. But if you don't have an account, or let's say your superintendent doesn't have an account, they can click that blue button at the bottom that says request account. And that will take you to the next slide. That will take you to a screen that allows you to identify yourself and what type of accounts you need. For high school counselors or teachers, you should select district counselor or high school counselor. Click that, and then that will take you, then you will self-identify. Teachers probably just need to identify yourself as a high school counselor for now. We may try to build in a teacher button here at one point just to customize that for you, but for right now, we're kind of treating high school counselors and teachers as the same way within the system. So just identify yourself as a high school counselor, submit the request. You'll tell us a little bit more about yourself, your first and last name, your email address, phone number, and your high school. And we need that high school because we need to make sure that it's an authorized high school. And then once you do all of that, you have requested your account. Now, if you are a brand new counselor or a brand new teacher and you have just requested an account for the first time, we are going to send an email to your district superintendent or headmaster, and they are going to have to click on a link to access MAAPP and approve you, authorize you as an authorized user, because we don't want you to just say that you are a counselor at Hospitality State High School. We want the leadership of that school to confirm that you are in fact who you say you are, and that you do in fact need access to this personal identifying information for all of these students. So once you have access, then you will be able to see all sorts of information. So after signing in, this is what the dashboard for a counselor would look like. This is actually my dummy account that I have that I'm showing you right now. And you can see how many of your students have completed a MAAPP, how many of your students have completed the FAFSA, how many of your students are missing documents, missing specifically ACT information, or missing specifically help course or curriculum certification. And as you can see, I have not done a very good job with my 5 fake students of updating their information. You can even see which students have been awarded, how much they've been awarded. And this, of course, is this would be for the students who graduated in May of last year. Periodically, we will display messages up in the dashboard area of like where it says dashboard that are reminders for counselors. You also have a link to the share portal where it says the blue button that says upload documents. That's a link to the share portal where you can upload files. Your share portal PIN number is right up under your name so that you always have that at your fingertips so you don't forget it. Let's go on to the next slide. If you click on students on the side panel in orange, you will see a list of all of your students. And this list includes any student with a state aid application or a FAFSA for the selected age year. And if you click on a student's name, you will be able to see the student detail panel. Next slide. Now the student detail panel looks a lot like what we saw for the students earlier. It consists of multiple tabs that shows you virtually the same view as what the student sees from his or her own dashboard. Next slide. Earlier, we talked about submitting student academic information like the GPA, the ACT score, the HELP curriculum certification. There are two ways to submit that information, and one way is right here in MAAPP. So you can actually edit a student's high school academic information on the high school tab by clicking the button that says Edit Info or Update Student Information. And this is what you will do if you just need to update some information for a single student. The other way to submit information is through the high school grade file, which we'll talk about in just a second. Next slide. In MAAPP, you can also click on reports to generate reports, which you can filter and sort in a number of ways. For example, if you want to identify all of the students who completed a MAAPP, you can do that. You can export your reports into an Excel document by clicking the blue button that says Export Report. One major improvement that we have made since last year is that all students who have completed a FAFSA or a MAAPP will be included in your student list. Last year, you could only see FAFSA information if the student had also completed a MAAPP. This year, you'll be able to see all students with either a FAFSA or a MAAPP or both. Students with neither will not appear on your list. Also, and this is just kind of a disclaimer, we do our very best to match student data from various sources as it comes into us. But sometimes that isn't possible because students don't always use the same information on every application. For example, they may go by Bubba on one application and Robert on another, or they may transpose birth dates, or a parent may fill it out and accidentally put their information instead of their child's. Lots of things happen. Next slide. You can view your own activity log that shows when you've logged into MAAPP, when you've logged out, and other activity you've taken while you're in the dashboard. Side. And finally, you have access to your own personal settings. And here you can change your email address, you can change your password, you can even change your role or your high school. Like let's say you're moving from one high school to another. Just note that if you update your high school, you will lose access to all the information at the old school, and you'll have to be reauthorized or authorized by the superintendent or headmaster at the new school. But you don't actually have to apply for a completely new login. You can actually just change all of that from within your settings. Next slide. We've mentioned several times now the high school grade file or grade submission. And this is really one of the most important things we ask our counselors to do, is to submit grades for all of your graduating seniors. Just a few slides back, I showed you how to submit academic information for a single student through MAAPP. Now I'm going to talk to you about the second way to submit that academic information, and this is through the high school grade file. High school counselors are asked to submit a file to our office with the academic information of every graduating high school senior as early as possible in the spring semester. So not only are your students counting on you to submit the information, but the financial aid laws actually require that this information come from the high school. And so we really are relying on you to get this information to us. The file, which you can generate, most of you can generate from your student information systems. I understand that all districts are different and you may have an outdated system and you may have to do some of this manually. But most of the newer systems can provide you with all of the information that you need for the file. It includes a 7-semester GPA, an ACT score, and the HELP curriculum certification. Now, please note, we only need a 7-semester GPA, which means that as soon as you have those fall semester grades, you can submit the high school grade file to us. In fact, we would really prefer that you not wait, that you submit those files in January or February and not wait until the April 30th help deadline is upon us. And we also know that everyone gets busier as the spring progresses with graduation and all of those end of the year activities. So a lot of counselors have told us it's easier to just go ahead and knock it out early in January. Also, our data has shown that very few students either gain or lose academic eligibility during that last semester of their senior year. Of course, it happens from time to time. You have a student who really pulls themselves together and increases their GPA right there at the end. And if that happens and you've already submitted your grade file, you can go into MAAPP and you can update that student's information at any time. If you have questions about creating or submitting the grade file, I know a lot, but I am a complete dunce when it comes to creating those files. So if you have questions about them, I encourage you to contact Brandon Johnson in our office. He is amazing and patient and kind and will talk you through it and hold your hand as you get that data information into the format we need it in and get it submitted to us. So I've provided his name and contact email right there. Do not hesitate to contact him if you have any questions about the grade file. Since all state applications are now being automatically considered for help, just like we automatically consider all students for MTAG and MESG, we are asking now for the second year in a row that counselors submit the help curriculum certification for all students. As part of the grade file. Remember, when you certify the help curriculum, you are only certifying that the student has or has not completed the help curriculum. You are not certifying that that student is eligible for help or that they meet any other criteria. All you are certifying is that yes, the student has completed the help curriculum, or no, the student has not. So what is the help curriculum? Well, it's the IHL, right now, it's the IHL required college prep curriculum plus one additional advanced elective. As you probably know, the graduation requirements are changing and the IHL required college prep curriculum is changing for the graduating class of 2022. During this past legislative session, we worked with legislators to update the help curriculum to completely align it with the IHL required college prep curriculum, beginning with that graduating class of 2022. So for seniors in 2022, all they need to do to meet the help core curriculum is to take the required IHL CPC, nothing extra. So hopefully that will make it a little bit easier for you counselors to keep everything aligned. Next slide. Gotten a lot of questions recently about ACT super scores. So ACT announced last year that as of September of 2020, so this month, ACT would begin publishing an ACT super score on the score reports of students who have taken the test more than once. And for those of you who may not know, an ACT super score is a composite score that is calculated from the highest ACT subject test scores in English, reading, math, and science across all the administrations of the test. SFA has, the board that governs our programs has voted to accept ACT super scores for state aid eligibility. A couple of caveats to that. Student financial aid will only accept official ACT super scores that have been calculated by ACT and that appear on the student's ACT score report. We are not going to be calculating ACT super scores within our office, and we ask that counselors not manually calculate super scores either, at least not for the purposes of state aid. If you are reporting a SuperScore, you should be reporting it directly from the SuperScore that you see ACT has already published. ACT SuperScores will be accepted for new applicants only, beginning with the 21-22 application cycle. That's the cycle that is opening right now on October 1st, 2020. And just to kind of let you know about the impact that we expect this decision to have, we are expecting to award an additional 350 eminent scholar grants every year and an additional 550 help grants every year because of ACT SuperScores. So this will make a big impact on the number of students that we serve. And I believe I have maxed out my time and hopefully have given you all the information that you need. Certainly can answer questions. But before I go, I just want to say that on behalf of my office, I hope you all have a great and successful school year. And please know that we appreciate each and every one of you for all that you do.
Thanks, Jennifer. That was super helpful. You answered a lot of the questions that had come in, such as how will SuperScores be gathered, any changes in the new graduation requirements that might affect MESG and HELP. And then we've got two that I don't believe were touched on, one of which is, does the 7th semester GPA need to be unweighted or can it be weighted?
Well, it has to be on a 4.0 scale. So the GPA should be submitted on a 4.0 scale according to whatever grade policy the school has in place. I don't know that that answers that question, but we will accept whatever grade the high school submits as long as it is in a 4.0. It cannot be a 4.5 or a 5.0. It needs to be a 4.0 GPA, but how each school gets to that GPA is based on the grade policy of the school.
Okay, great. And then another question is, what if the student starts college in the summer after graduating from high school? Can they still take the ACT to be eligible for the HELP grant?
If they enroll full-time in the summer and into their degree, then no. It would be when, but if they're just taking a course or two in the summer before they enroll full-time in the fall, then yes.
Okay, great. We haven't had any other questions come in, but if any of the participants have any lingering ones, please drop them in the chat and we'll grab Jennifer before we end to answer those. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Jennifer. As Kirsten said, very informative and helpful presentation. For those of you watching, we will email a recording of this webinar in the next couple of days. We'll email that directly to you, and we will also post it on our YouTube channel. We would appreciate it if you would complete the short survey that will automatically pop up at the end of the webinar. Please fill that survey out if you get a chance and give us any feedback on today's webinar so that we can keep improving. So this was our fourth in our 10 Topic Tuesday series. Our next Topic Tuesday webinar will be on Tuesday, October the 6th, so we have a couple of weeks off. During that webinar, we'll be hearing from 4 of our 8 Mississippi IHL schools about their scholarship procedures for the 2021 school year. And then after that, we will hear from the other 8 on part 2 of the scholarship procedures. We will continue this webinar series throughout the fall semester. If you participate in 5 webinars, you will have the opportunity to apply for 0.5 CEUs. And if you participate in all 10 webinars, you will have the opportunity to apply for 1 full CEU. As you see on the screen, these webinars will include topics such as hearing from the remaining IHL schools about their scholarship procedures, counseling, cultural competencies, selective college admissions, counselor recommendation letters, and of course, get to college's favorite topic, federal financial aid and the FAFSA. You know, we love to talk about a FAFSA. So you can register for these webinars on our Get to College website. They're listed under the Educator tab and then choose Professional Development. While you're there registering, please check out all of our other resources for you and your students listed under that Educator tab. So as you can see on this slide, we have a few other professional development opportunities coming up. We've got some ACT instructor trainings, which have been led by Stephen Brown from our Jackson Get to College office. We've got 3 of those coming up in October, so make sure that you tell any ACT instructors or teachers in your schools about these instructor trainings. We've gotten some really good reviews from this, and there's some really good information in there as you're trying to help your students navigate the ACT. Also, if you'd like to see Kirsten and I again, we have some FAFSA trainings coming up in September before the FAFSA opens on October 1. So please join us for that. They're actually just 2 hours. So we've condensed what we had formerly done in 5 hours into
It looks like Shannon has froze. So we've condensed 5 into 2 with supplemental self-paced modules that will allow you to get the full 0.5 CUs if you need them. Also, to kind of wrap up with everything, we have, of course, our contact information. So we want to make sure that you guys have that and have it available. We appreciate you joining the webinar today. It doesn't look like there's been any questions that have come in, Jennifer. I know you shared your contact information as well as Brandon's for any of those counselors that have questions about the grade file submission. So any last words, Jennifer, you want to share with the group?
Just good luck, and just know that state aid doesn't have to be scary. We'll try to walk you through any questions that you have and be there for you to support you in this crazy, crazy time we're all living in.
Great. Well,
thank you, Kirsten, for jumping in. Appreciate it. All right. Well, thank y'all so much for participating today, and we look forward to seeing y'all in a couple of weeks as we talk about scholarship opportunities. And do know that a lot of these colleges have told me that the scholarship information they're going to be sharing will actually be hot off the presses on October 6th for our first webinar. So make sure that you tune in for that, and we look forward to seeing you guys again in October.
Thanks.